Hey, Hardin County, this is Michelle Labus, and I went to a couple meetings last week, and I want to get those reports out to you. One of them was the Budget Commission meeting with our local school districts. Okay, so Budget Commission meetings, they meet 4 times a year, and they are the ones who certify the amount of estimated revenue for each of these entities, like the schools and the libraries and such, and the county. So they brought all the school superintendents and the treasurers together and kind of gave them an update. Jim Hoops was there, who is the 81st House representative for our area, and he came to answer questions and to kind of give an update on, there were 5 bills that DeWine passed earlier this year that's going to affect our property tax, budget commission kind of stuff. And so he gave an update on those, and then everybody was able to ask questions and that kind of thing. And then really the point of the meeting is to just certify those numbers so that the school have them for budgeting next year. All right, so one of the things that Jim Hoops talked about is that in the 70s, they instituted, so these are things that affect school funding, right? So in the 70s, they had the HB 920, which kind of put inside millage. So they have inside millage that goes up with your property values, and then outside millage, which is kind of capped off as a dollar amount. So if you have $100,000 voted in at 1 mil, then 10, 15 years down the road, that is still just $100,000 that gets paid out, and they apply a reduction factor to the original millage of like 1, and that reduction factor brings it down to, like a 0.239, right? And the effective rate, the effective millage on that is what gives you your $100,000. So you're not paying on your taxes the full rate, the full millage rates, but a lot of them are reduced so that they have the dollar amount. And everybody knows the dollar amounts that were voted in, like in 76 and the 80s, are not quite as significant as they are today. $100,000 doesn't go very far in this day and age. So that happened in the 70s. And then in the 80s, they said, well, we need to secure a minimum amount of school funding, right? And so they had this bright idea, which is proving to be not successful back then, that they were going to do a 20 mil floor, which is a 2% effective rate for your house property tax. So generally, you have, on the inside millage, you're going to have some funding for your local school district, which goes up with the property house values. And then the other levies are voted in. The bond issues are voted in. And of course, they're capped out at the dollar amount. And so inflation goes up and the value of that millage goes down. And so they said, okay, we have a 20 mil floor that you need to spend at least that 2% on your local schools. And generally, most of the schools were above that, right? Because of the additional levies and things, and the house prices were down lower, and so percentage wise they were in a good position. Well, between 22 and 23 there was a huge hike in house assessments and house values, and so when the house values went up, right, well, all of a sudden your 20 mil floor, which is here, the amount that the schools were bringing in compared to the assessment of the properties was down below. It maybe was at 16, 17 mils, right? Because it's based on this ratio. And so, according to the laws that they had, the 20 mil floor, those house prices, so they were down below, they got an increase, right? And so for Kenton, the previous year we voted on the bond issue with the school, right? And the house prices were down lower. The very next year we get hit with this increase, and now we have an additional levy essentially on our schools that we didn't get to vote on. So it came out for all of Hardin County, it came out to be $3.7 million between the 5 school districts. That, you know, that you had the 20 mil floor, house prices went up, it went down. This jump right here was $3.7 million. Kenton got a $1 million hike in 1 year, and so that was significant. Ada got 600,000. The other ones got right around 300,000, 200,000 increase, and that's caused a lot of issues. Now, the auditor we are on the very beginning of this update, right? That kind of happened. And so Mike Bacon and the auditors went to the legislators early 23 and said, hey, this is not good. This is going to really turn out bad. You guys need to do something. And so they tried to get them to listen. They didn't. Nothing happened in 22, 3. Nothing happened in 24. There was some legislation that came in 25, but DeWine vetoed it. And now here we are in 26 with these 5 bills. They're trying to kind of scramble together to put something together to make a difference. But really the damage has been done. We've been seeing and hearing people all around neighboring counties, you know, as we have 3 different years where our county was first that was hit in that cycle, and then you had Logan County, and then you have the big cities are getting hit, and now we're going to get hit again this next year with higher properties because we get assessed every 3 years. And so people are saying, hey, our property taxes are doubling, and it's partly because of this 20 mil floor. And so they talked all about that. Some of the things that maybe they didn't expect back in the 80s was there's less housing, right? So we have corporations coming and just buying up gobs and gobs of houses, which puts the demand higher, and so house prices are going up. The weight of distribution has changed drastically. So the weight of property tax used to be on businesses and, you know, 60-40 on businesses and smaller residential. Well, that has completely flipped. And now businesses and corporations are getting massive tax abatements, and then the residentials are picking up the slack. And so we're feeling it more. So there's a lot of, those are some of the factors that are going into why this bubble's kind of burst, right? So for 40 years, they've just been saying, oh, and the fact that all the schools are now at this 20 mil floor. So if you think about this is your minimum amount of funding that we're, I guess, per the assessment value, we're funding less, even though we are definitely funding more, right? But that's their minimum. That's the 20 mil floor. Okay, so that's part of the problem. These 5 bills that they talked about, I don't know how effective they're going to be. They don't know either. So, you know, some of the legislators come in, Mike, you know, he's been at these meetings. They say they come in, I think they had 52 different bills, and they were like, here, try this one, here, try this one. And they just keep throwing different things at them, and the auditors are like, you can't do that, that's not going to work. And so they've come out with these 5 bills that will make a difference, but they're not real sure until they actually run the numbers in all the counties how much of a difference it's going to make. I think somewhere that said, you know, you may see a difference of $150 on your bill, which isn't a lot. So some of what you're going to see, and this is all going to take effect at the second half of this tax year. So we have the original tax laws currently now. At the second half, we're going to get these new bills are going to take effect, which has never ever happened in the 31 years that Mike's been in office. And I think it's because of the property tax issue that they're trying to get some relief, some action in there before November. Anyway, so we have H Bill 186. It's kind of the biggest one, and it's called the inflation cap credit. So you'll see that on your tax bill in the second half. And it's automatically applied if your school district is on the 20 mil floor and you will apply for this. So that's going to be all of Hardin County. On your property taxes, you will see a rollback number, a non-business credit is one of the columns, and then a owner-occupied credit. So one of them is a 10% rollback, and the other one is a 2.5% rollback. They're basically, this bill is basically going to kind of flip those. So they're going to get rid of the 10%. It's over a 4-year period, so you're only talking a reduction of 2.5% every year for these 4 years. So they're going to bring this one down a little bit, and they're going to bring this one up a little bit. So owner-occupied homes, single-family homes, are going to get a bigger discount than renters and businesses and all those kind of things. It's something, it's not great. And like I said, it's over a 4-year period of time. It's not going to be that big a deal. The other thing that I thought was interesting about these rollbacks, so the rollbacks today and in the future are always paid by the state. So these rollbacks, once you factor out your tax bill and so the rollbacks, our property taxes pay our levies, right? And the state doesn't get that local money. It stays local, but yet we get a rollback on the levies. Well, you still have to fund the levies because they're expecting to have this money. And so even though we're getting rollbacks, discounts off of our properties, the state is paying them. So we're paying state tax, right? The state tax is going up into their big pot of money. And then we have the rollbacks, which brings the bill down for our levies. And then the state fills in the gap with our state income tax. So the state is already paying a portion of our levies anyways. So that mechanism is already in place. So I thought that was kind of interesting. They are going to continue to do that. They're also going to continue to fund the schools at the normal rate the second half. So if there's a significant drop in revenue in that second half, because of course they don't know, the state will fill that gap so that the schools will be whole. They won't have to go through any budget readjustments this year. So they're going to do that. We also have HB 335. Oh, so here's the other part of this is they kind of are, they're not going to admit that they made a mistake, but there was a mistake made with these increasing house and this huge property tax bubble that's kind of exploding. And so they go, okay, maybe this wasn't such a great idea. Let's go back to 2022 numbers, because those are the actual cost numbers that they have at the state foundation funding. So they're going to go back to those 22 numbers and say, let's just pretend we didn't have this big rise. Let's just pretend we had inflationary gain from 22 to 26 and whatever they determine that inflationary gain is. And then that's where the new budget number is going to come. So it's going to be, the idea is that the gains that the schools have had was exponential, right? So it was way too high. So their budget is going to have to come down no matter what, because you're lowering the rate of increase, which then is going to lower them down below the 20 mil floor. Because remember, they were down below originally and then it got hiked up. So the inflationary increases may get them kind of close, but they're probably all going to be below the 20 mil floor. And this allows them to do that. So they're not getting that guaranteed funding of the 20 mil floor anymore. So that's going to go in place. Again, another really unknown, because this is not the only funding that the schools get. So this is just a portion of the funding. And so what's that all going to look like for them? They don't really know. So that's HB 335. We also have HB 309, which I think this is the emergency levies that the schools had. So you were supposed to have emergency levies that said, oh, it's emergency, let's do this thing. But then they kind of were really easy to get put on the ballots and approved. And so we have emergency levies that just keep continuing. And so you go, I don't think it's an emergency anymore. And so they're kind of putting tighter restrictions on those. So that's another one of the bills. And then the other two, it's HB 129 and HB 124. It gets a little, so those are the 5 bills, but it gets a little bit where the Budget Commission, which if you remember is the auditor, prosecutor, treasurer, is the one who certifies the numbers, and they, through these bills, are given the authority to go in and say, hey, schools, you have too much money. We are not going to tax people anymore because you're not using what you have. The same goes for townships, right? So they talked about this in the township meetings, that if the Budget Commission doesn't approve the way that you're going to spend your local monies, then they're not going to let you have your levies. And if you look out on your property, so this is on your property card at the auditor's office. If you do real estate search, you can find this. Down in this section here is the Kenton school levies. So they have quite a few. 2 bond issues, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they have 5 voted levies plus the 2 bond issues that were voted. And then they have, here in orange is the inside millage. So they have 3.5 mills that are inside that do track with house value increases. The others do not. And so those are where they can say, hey, we're going to give you a larger reduction and you have to use some of your monies. So those are kind of the things. It's a lot of information, and I'm sorry. I hope you're following along. There's still a lot of other issues with the schools, and the schools had some really great questions for Jim Hoops and some frustrations. And school finances are crazy complicated. They have money coming in from all different areas, and so it's very difficult, and they have different timelines. I mean, that's one of the things, that not everything is on the same timeline. Everything is kind of scattered, and so being able to say, okay, here's our county budget, it starts here, it ends here, that doesn't happen. There's always a constant rolling of somebody's budget starting and ending at different times. And so with the tax bills changing mid-year, our county's not going to have their numbers certified until like August, but then that's the very same time that the schools have to have their budgets in and have their things certified. And it's like, how are we going to get our numbers done if we don't even have your numbers? And now, because of these bills and what the Budget Commission authority they're asking the schools to do a 5-year cost plan out, right? This 5-year plan, when they're like, but we don't even know what our numbers are going to be, right? And this is a huge shift. So there's lots and lots of problems. I'm sure there's going to be some leeway, and they're going to have to bust their butts to do the best they can to get these numbers out. And so it really is a tough situation, not made by them, but definitely made by the legislators and the people who are picking the timing. So the other things they talked about were like the capital improvement funds. How much are they going to be able to keep? What are some of the others? So the other good questions that they had, they talked about, the Brown Stadium. As a state legislator, why are we paying for these things instead of paying for our schools? Ohio's had given a $20 billion tax abatement to these companies, when these companies should be helping take the burden off our local governments and off of our schools. The Cleveland Brown thing, he did say that's in court. I do believe it's in court, and because they're using the unclaimed funds to pay for some of that, which it's like, is that even legal? And it's a 30-year loan payback, so it's kind of crazy, but I don't think it should be something that we suffer for entertainment. When we're talking about, these are essential services. Cleveland Brown Stadium is not an essential service. they're asking, how are we supposed to give raises to our people if we don't even have our numbers, and they're trying to do negotiations and, care for their teachers and their staff, and yet they're not given anything. Oh, somebody had brought up the voucher programs where in the, everything is really good the first year. But then once you have something that's good, then everybody wants to take a piece of it. And so all of a sudden you have this voucher program that used to be good, but now everybody gets it. Private schools are getting vouchers and getting tax money and doing these things, but yet private schools and charter schools don't have special ed care. They don't have the requirements that they do from a state level. So why are they getting voucher programs if our public schools are the ones who hold all the responsibility and all the regulations? And they talked about this maintenance of effort, that you have to show, you have to increase your special education, but like budget every year. You have to show that you're growing that to meet demand, to show effort. And it's like, we can't even maintain what we have, let alone grow this kind of, they didn't say that, that's what I'm saying. But they have this maintenance of effort that is just kind of killing them. And so a lot of good things they brought up. And you can actually get the recording. Mike Bacon records that every year if you want to listen to it and hear some of the concerns from our people. So it was good. It's a tough spot. And, Mike Bacon is really good, as our county auditor, and he's going to get them what they need as soon as they can. It's just a matter of waiting on the state to get that in. So those are some of the things that are happening with our school tax. And then if you wait, I will tell you about the townships. So the township meetings, the townships are going to be affected by the school tax. And so, that's a whole nother conversation. So anyways, there's a little bit on schools. It's a mess. Definitely needs to be simplified. I would love to see more local funding for our schools instead of these, everything being, and we don't have a federal Department of Education anymore. And so it should be state and local. So we're going to see how that all trickles out. And you always wonder if that's why the Budget Commission is getting more power, is because of that shift in authority. All right. Thanks, Hardin County. We'll talk to you later.